Thank you. Good evening all. Very happy to launch a very, very unusual book by a very unusual young man. The book is called Rabbit and the Squirrel, which sounds like a children's book, but actually it is not. It is a fable for adults. Much like what Animal Farm was, but it's of course not the same genre, but you know what I mean. Siddharth has been a friend for many, many years. He has a gift of eternal youth. I don't think he has changed in all these years that I've known him.
थोड़ा पीछे हाँ हाँ
You know, JB, when we were in France earlier this year, I said to you that the extraordinary gift that you have given me is the two of you coming here for me being like this. Remember when we were talking about this? And I said, this is the first book that I've published after my father passed away. And having them here makes me feel infinitely less orphaned. And that's what I said to you. So I want to thank you for coming here as my spiritual elders in my extended family. But you know, JB, first I'll ask you, why did you say yes? Why did you agree to come and grace an occasion by a novice writer?
Because you asked me.
No, please.
There's a very famous limerick that aptly describes my presence here tonight, ladies and gentlemen. A funny young man from the Clyde on a funeral carriage was spied. When asked who is dead, he giggled and said, "I don't know, I just came for the ride."
There are many repartees I could offer, but I shan't. I'm going to discontinue the joke now, though. I'm thinking you grew up in a literary household. Your father, Dr. Bachchan Jaya Bachchan, is a legendary poet. What was it to grow up in a household of books?
You kept away from his room. And there was an unwritten code of conduct in the family that when my father is writing in his study, he is not to be disturbed. Many a times we found that to be a little odd, but then Mother would explain to us that it's important for creative people, and particularly the writers, to have their moment of solitude and to be able to express themselves. They needed the peace and harmony of a home to be able to do that. That was some of the early impressions that we had. But as we grew up, there were many occasions when, if he was doing an important piece of work, I remember that he was asked by Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru to translate a biography on him, written by Michael Bishop, into Hindi, and there was a deadline that he had to finish before his birthday. And he was working day and night, and he put out a little placard, almost like a painting outside the door of his studies. That meant that nobody was allowed to go in and disturb him. And this used to happen for days and days and days. We never really knew how he was or what he was doing. That's the kind of temperament that we grew up in. But yes, every time my father would write a piece of poem, we were the first people that he would introduce the poem. And in particular, he would ask us to read it in almost the same graph and the tone that he had written. And I felt that that was an extremely important exercise, because later on in my work as a professional actor, I found that the respect that we need to give writers is the most important aspect in filmmaking. I feel that writers are the most important ingredient in filmmaking. They, design the character, they design the story, they design the dress, the location, everything. And once they write, it's written with a lot of conviction and strength. And it's important to be able to gauge their mind and the graph of their language before you actually say your lines. So some of the things that we learned, I learned from my father, was to be able to recite some of his works in the same graph and language. That I found very valuable. Other than that, of course, the numerous people of letters that used to visit him, and to be just sitting quietly and listening to them converse and discuss various aspects of life, poetry, and literature was indeed a very revealing aspect. I remember when we were in Allahabad, there was a union that was formed by the students that he was teaching. He was teaching English literature in Allahabad University. And they used to sit after midnight and discuss, words, literature, poems, writings. And many a times, even though we were not allowed to be awake at that point of time, we would sit up and just be present with them and listen to them. Those are some of the experiences that we grew up with.
Well, what do you remember of those days, that time, which is magical hour?
Well, just the concept of, picking each other's brains, writing, somebody's written work used to be discussed, somebody's poem used to be discussed, why we wrote it, what was the intent, much like what you just described in your description of your book. Many people go through certain emotions or the need to write something, and to be able to express it in verse is indeed a quality that we used to gather there.
Jayaji, your father, Tarun Kumar Bhadri, was a celebrated writer, making great books on the ground. Tell us about which of his books is your favorite?
His first, that was a travelogue that he did, and he traveled around the world. It was very, very simple.
And what about it that impacted you so?
Knowledge, and his observation, his take. This Indian man traveling all over the world and his own, with very little means.
That kind of independence. And did you read to your children, or now do you read to your grandchildren?
Absolutely.
What do you
Every night.
Really?
I have to tell you a story.
Yeah.
My granddaughter, that's my daughter's daughter, Navya Naveli, when she was little, I used to make up stories every night. And in Hindi, when you tell children some stories, you always say ek tha raja or ek thi rani. Aise, because I heard my father-in-law also saying this. And every day they'd get lost in a boat with the prince and the princess. The king would be worried, the queen would be crying. And I used to every day add a little bit. Fortunately, they didn't live with us. They'd go back to Delhi, so I got some rest. The second child arrived. Now I had to tell a story to both of them. And I started telling the same story, adding a little bit, and paying a little more attention to the prince as well. It used to be more the princess before. One night, and it used to be all in dark, and they were in these bunker beds. So the older one slept up, and the younger one slept down. She just bent down a little. Nani, can we have a new story? I mean, poor child, mean, she was patient for so long listening to my stories, and she exactly knew. But when they're little, they love to hear the same thing. But I realized she'd grown up, so it was time to stop making stories and read their proper published books. And then I started reading.
Oh, wonderful. What a great gift that you were able to give. JB, also you told me one thing ages ago, that the Bachchans are the most reluctant to part with a book. Why is that?
I don't know. I mean, he's worse than me.
You know, you go out to a bookstore, most of the time, well, these days one doesn't have the opportunity to go to a bookstore in town. So it's mostly the airports. When you're catching a flight, you have a bookstore and you rummage through all the bestsellers and you see the books. And you spend a lot of time before your flight in selecting a book. Then while you're in the plane, you start to read it. You make your little note on top of the first page. You write your name. You write the date you bought the book. You write the shop that you got it from. The flight you're on, how long it's going to take for you to reach your destination. All these details are there on every front page of the book. I'm not going to part with that book just
When we were little, and kids are invited to birthday parties, and I remember, kids would bring a box of Cadbury's chocolate or a box of cookies and things like that. When we were very little, that was fine. When we grew a little older, my father would always say, give a book. It remains on the shelf. Maybe not then, but sometime you pull it out and read it. That's more important than eating the biscuits and the chocolates. So this is something that I was used to, and it was my job in the house to every Sunday clean the bookshelves. And and I would sort of go through them, and it's such an interesting activity. And so when you've taken care, and you've been told, and you've been brought up with books more than anything else, even more than a piece of jewelry, it's a little difficult to part with gifts, books. So, but sometimes I feel, okay, you've read it, I collect books and I send it to schools, especially for their library. And then I get to hear from the office, "Oh, sahab ne pura wapas mangwaya." It's futile exercise. I mean, there is no place in the shelves for the books, and now they're on the floor.
Can we stop this domestic conversation?
So that's why books are so important, and that's why we need to part.
Jaya, I think we're going to meet in this call. Uncle, for me, writing is not only about expressing myself, but it's a way to refine thought and to try and be more consciously present in the world. You are committed to writing your blog, and you write. Great dedication and integrity every day. There's no team serving that blog, it's you. Could you tell me what you have learned from the years of writing?
It started off as a joke. Somebody said that, you need to have a website in your name because there are about 150 websites under your name and none of them is the original. And I asked them how long it would take. They said it would take about 6-7 months. We'll collect all the material and we need to spend time with you. I said, that's too long. Can I do something tomorrow? And they said, yeah, you can write a blog. I said, what is that? And they explained it to me. And they put me onto a site and I wrote, hello, how are you? And closed the blog. And the next day there was 2 comments that came to me. And I said, wow, this is terrific. So I took those 2 comments and I said, thank you so much for writing to me. Who are you and how are you? There was 4 lines. And I got 10 more replies. And this just carried on. Now I have about 500 dedicated people on the blog who I have now named my EF, which is my extended family. I'm on 3,896 days every day. I've been writing the blog, and it's just, I feel very committed now because I know that there are at least 500 people who are waiting for this blog to come. And sometimes when I've forgotten to push the right button, the post button on the computer, from 5 o'clock in the morning I start getting these alarms. What happened to you, sir? Where's the blog? You haven't pressed the right button. Yeah, do it right now. So it's almost like a commitment, and, but it's really wonderful. No matter what time I finish at night, most of the time it's very late, I do find time to write something. It's a moment, as you described earlier on in your speech, of wanting to spend time with yourself, to have your own solitude, and maybe just have an opportunity to talk to yourself. And if you can express that in words, and if there are a few people that want to read it, it's just wonderful. It's not for any kind of personal gain or any kind of commercial gain. It's just something that comes out. I never know what I'm going to write until you actually open that blog post. And then suddenly everything starts coming. It could be anything. Just a review of the day's work, some issue that has troubled you, something that my father wrote, something that I wanted to express on that.
You know, since I have a book out, and I've always turned to the two of you for advice.
Can you speak a little louder?
Sure. Would you like me to screen judge? I'm happy to do so. As I have a book out, can you please advise me on what is the sensible way to deal with criticism?
You're asking me.
Both of you.
You're asking the wrong person.
Come on, JB, I'm sure you can be vaguely diplomatic for half a minute.
I should try.
By the way, my entire accomplishment of this entire evening is not the book or any of that. The fact that JB has not screamed at me in like 60 minutes is like a huge deal. So I won this show at this point in time.
I'm the wrong person to answer. He's the one. He's
Yeah,
the diplomat. He'll do it.
She's rolling.
He'll answer
this. What's the correct, sensible response one can have to criticism?
I don't actually care.
Well, the first assurance that you get is actually somebody's read your work. It's very important for us in the creative field, because if nobody goes to see our film, that's really bad. So that's one of the first things that comes to your mind. But seriously, I would accept criticism. I would like to accept criticism, because I think it gives you an aspect of your work which you were not aware of. And there are many critics, I'm sure there are many here tonight, who are able to have the perception of being able to go beyond what you've written or have a different viewpoint. And I think it's important for anyone that's in the creative field to know that. Many a times we are unaware of it, and most of the times the critics are right and we are wrong. In such situations, when you feel that they've been unfair, cut that criticism out from the piece of paper, stick it on your bathroom wall, and every morning look into the mirror and say, one day, buddy, I'm going to disprove you.
So, Amitabh, I want to thank you for teaching the wisdom and remaining silent. And Jaji, I want to thank you for showing the strength it takes in speaking out, because these are the two fundamental things I have been lucky enough to learn from both of you. I also wanted to give you a copy read my book?
I've got the book, I've read it.
And you've kept it in France, so
No.
that's like a Jayaji.
It's back. Yes, it is. I've given it to my sister to read it. She read it and she's brought it back.
I don't really know. May I please invite you to give this book a blessing? Actually, Amitabh, sorry. I started out in the evening with bringing my ancestors in. Is there a line of your dad's poetry that would serve as a blessing as you share this book with the rest of the world? Is there something that comes to you that's appropriate, that feels like a blessing, so that all our ancestors looking up can smile?
I really don't know. I can't really say a line without the entire verse, and I don't remember the entire poem, but I was talking earlier on about how sometimes my father would ask me to read some of the poems that he had written and explain to me the graph of the poem. So there was a poem that he wrote on the kind of the rush of life that we all go through. And he wrote, जीवन की आपाधापी में कब वक्त मिला कुछ देर कहीं पर बैठ, कभी ये सोच सकते जो किया कहा माना उसमें क्या बुरा। जिस दिन मेरी चेतना जगी मैंने देखा मैं खड़ा हुआ हूँ इस दुनिया के मेले में, हर एक यहाँ पर एक भुलावे में भूला, हर एक लगा है अपनी अपनी देहे में। कुछ देर रहा हक्का बक्का भौचक्का सा, आ गया कहाँ क्या करूँ यहाँ जाऊँ किस जान, फिर एक तरफ से आया ही तो थक्का सा, मैंने भी बहना शुरू किया इस रेले में। So life, he said, was एक रेला है, एक मेला है, जीवन किया कहा मानो उसमें क्या बुरा। But these are the lines. It's okay to recite them, but what he actually made me understand was that many a times a poet writes an expression and through words actually gives it some kind of physicality. So if this first line were to be read the way he had written it, to explain the rush of life, it would be something like this. कि जीवन की आपाधापी में कब वक्त मिला कुछ देर कहीं पर बैठ कभी ये सोच सकूं जो किया कहा माना उसमें क्या बुरा।
Just give it to you. Thank you very much for coming.
भाई नीचे बैठ जा भाई।
Big thank you for what turned out to be absolutely delightful. A big thanks to Tata in association with NCPA, co-sponsors Tata Steel and associate sponsors SBI and LIC for making this happen. Coming up next here is a big one, the debate, the topic of which is India needs a presidential system, with Anand Ameja and Rajesh Jain for the motion and Lisa Sitalwal and Pawan Miss it, see you here shortly.
सर दिस साइड
Got some good news. Siddharth Shanghvi's books are available at the pop-up bookstore at the Tata foyer, so you can go ahead and get them, and he's ready to sign them.
भाग बाइट के लिए